aside from the guy we're waiting on. Can you talk about the defensive line class coming in and signed, Philip Dukes especially, and then the others?
Yeah, we were fortunate that this year was a really good year in the state of South Carolina for defensive linemen, and that's where it starts. First of all, is the state of South Carolina, and we want to solidify this, our situation in this state. And there were on September 1st, I think there were 11 guys in this state that we were actively recruiting, and then today we signed 9 of them, I believe. So when you have that kind of year in the state, that's what we're trying to do, and keeping these guys at home, and that's what we've really stressed and really tried to do. As far as defensive line goes, everybody in the country is trying to sign defensive linemen, and we were fortunate that this year there were a lot of really, really talented defensive linemen in this state, and obviously we were battling everybody for them, a lot of the best teams across the country. But when you can sign that kind of defensive, or those kind of defensive linemen out of your own state, it makes it a whole lot easier. It was a position of need for us. We didn't have a whole lot of depth up there. We got, we lose a couple guys in Lottie and Cliff. We've got some older guys coming back next year, so we knew early on that needed to be a priority for us, and really like the way we finished things at that position.
Steve, what was the reason for the 28 rule, and are you okay with it? You probably had to work around it.
Yeah, the 28 rule was put in this year. I think Ole Miss signed 34, 35 or something. And they knew they weren't coming to their school, and so the athletic directors, president, or whoever got together and said you can only sign 28. So it sort of makes it a little different than in the past, because you could sign like 3 or 4 or maybe even 5 guys that were questionable whether or not they qualified. And it always worked out for us, the ones that didn't make it, and we could bring in the 25. So it makes it a little different now.
Do you think it's a good rule?
I don't know if it's a good rule or not. I really don't. I think it's here to stay, so I might as well like it.
Steve, going back to Monday, you got a player that you wanted, and then Tuesday you got a player that you wanted, and today you got a player that you wanted. You didn't lose anybody. Is this the best finish you think you've had? I know you still have the one dude waiting, but is this the best finish you think you've had in South Carolina?
Well, we going into today, we felt like all these guys were going to sign, and thus far we have. I think there's one piece of paper that's across the country somewhere. So there hasn't been any surprises that much. Of course, just this past week, we got commitments from Jarrell Adams and Philip Dukes, and our linebacker, Cedric Cooper, was a late addition this week. So we got our last 3 guys, so that's good. And again, I was watching the recruiting show, and we all look at the recruiting rankings and so forth. I think we're 24 in ESPN last I looked, and that's probably, most of them will probably be 20, 25, somewhere in here, which is fine. And they were talking about Virginia Tech is never very high in the recruiting rankings, and every year they're competing for or winning the ACC. So recruiting is very important, don't get me wrong, but it's not everything. And I think Urban Meyer said 3 years from now, nobody will give a dang where you were ranked in recruiting. But everybody cares today, because we all look at it, and it does give you hope or a little boost, because we are competing in that area this time of year also. It was also interesting that 2 of the guys working television today, Randy Shannon had the #1 recruiting class in 2008. Urban Meyer had the #1 class last year. And both those guys were working television. Now, Urban left because of health reasons, or stress, or what have you. But the other guy got fired. So obviously, what's most important, it's very important to get good, solid players here, whether or not they 5-star or 3 stars. But after that, it's how the coaches develop their players, and how the players really develop themselves. The commitment level that they have is I think most important. And we believe we got a good bunch of character young guys here that are ready to come in and try to help us win the SEC.
Either Steve or Shane, how important is it to go ahead and get players that that earlier you might have given a redshirt year too, but maybe how important is it to get them out on the field now and get them to play with the new rules as far as underclassmen taking 3 years before you can go to the NFL? How important is it to get guys that you might have given that extra year of redshirt to get them on the field and get as much out of them as you can?
The way we do it, and I think most schools do it, is if he's good enough to play his first year, he plays. If he's not good enough to help you, then don't play the young man. Now you're talking about guys that are good enough to go to the NFL, and obviously most all the players you sign believe they're going to go, and when in actuality they're not going to go. Only about 2% or so get an opportunity to go. But anyway, if they're good enough to help your team, we do play them the first year and go from there. And if they're not going to play much, then we try to go ahead and redshirt them. If they last 5 years, that's fine. But it is getting a little more unusual that you do not have many fifth-year players. We still hope to have a lot of fifth-year offensive linemen if we can. So that's just the way we do it right there.
You've signed a lot of offensive linemen the last 2 years. Do you see something special in Shell that maybe he's a guy that could play right away? Is he physically kind of?
Yeah, we're certainly going to give Brandon Shell an opportunity to play left tackle this year. So he'll be getting coached real hard, and of course we'll coach real hard. Kyle Nunn is there right now, and hopefully Brandon will come in here and compete for starting positions, playing time, or whatever. But yeah, Brandon is a big-time recruit. Could have gone about anywhere in the country, as we know. And it's neat to see the best in-state players staying in our state now. Seems like a lot of them stayed in-state all the way around.
Shane, you got your eyes on any of these guys for special teams?
Yeah, absolutely. Like Coach said, if they're good enough to play, we're going to try and get them on the field from day one, and whether that be offense, defense, special teams, we need to make sure we get our best athletes out there, like Coach has said in the past, and a lot of those guys, Coach and I were talking about the other day, we've got a lot of guys on this list that have size and can run, and those are two qualities you got to have as well. So certainly when they get here in August for practice, we'll be keeping an eye on a bunch of those guys.
Steve, you mentioned the difficulty of getting to working the 28 number. You guys had 2 public commitments who didn't sign today. How do you handle that with those 2 guys?
We've handled it, and hopefully they're still going to be with us. That's about all I can tell you. Hopefully they're going to still be with us, and we'll see how it plays out down the road. But they did not sign an official paper today. You're right.
How are you going to refer to the Dixon boys have nicknames? Or
Northwestern, one of them went to Northwestern, one went to South Point. We call them South Point Dixon and Northwestern Dixon.
Let's just call them North and South.
It might be simpler. South Point, Northwestern. Yeah.
Steve, has G.A. Mangus opened up an area of the country to you that you haven't had?
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah, the New Jersey, Philly area. Yeah, Coach G.A. Coached up there at Delaware Valley, so he's got a lot of connections, and we're able to pull 3 players out of there that we think are going to be really good players for us. Sheldon Royster, defensive back, safety type player from St. Peter's Prep there, right across the river from New York City. And of course, Tanner McAvoy, and then we can't talk about the other one. Paper hadn't come in yet. That's right. Yeah, that's right.
Anything else for Coach? Shane?
All right, but we think it's a good bunch of guys, good group of guys. Yeah. All right.